Hello, my name is Nolan Anderson, plant pathology specialist here with Texas A&M AgriLife Research and AgriLife Extension. As part of the Crop Protection Network's Fungicide Rules series, I'm going to discuss rule number one. That's rotate or use premix fungicides. So first off, what and why rotate? Why is this important? What does rotate mean? When we're speaking on rotating fungicides, we're talking about rotating more than just the active ingredient or chemical, but also the mode of action. This would mean saying no to repeated applications of single groups of fungicides. And this rotation is to help preserve the long-term efficacy of our fungicides so that we're able to use them for disease control and disease management for as long as possible. Now, if you're unsure of what group, number, or mode of action your fungicide belongs to, if you look on the label, as we see here on the screen, circled in red now is the active ingredient and group number. In this case, prothioconazole belonging to group 3. Preserving this long-term efficacy is important to managing resistance development, as we have seen that repeated applications of the same mode of action can increase risk of fungicide resistance developing within our pathogen populations. And this reduced sensitivity and resistance can occur across different chemicals within the same group. So it's very important to manage this resistance to preserve the long-term efficacy. Now, the Fungicide Resistance Action Committee, or FRAC for short, has classified all fungicide classes or groups into resistant development risks. And for the field crop fungicides that we commonly see used, our Group 11 QOIs are classified as a high risk of developing fungicide resistance. Our Group 3 DMI and Group 7 SDHI fungicides are classified as a medium to high risk. So what about a premix? What is a premix, first off? Well, is it a single active ingredient, a single mode of action, or a take mix or two or more products? Now, if we go back and look at this same label, we can see it as a single active ingredient, a single mode of action. This would not be a premix, considered a premix. What a premix would be considered is two or more active ingredients, oftentimes two or more modes of action, and they're going to be pre-packaged within the same fungicide formulation. So we look on this Delaro label, we can see that it has prothioconazole, same as the previous label, but in addition to that, has an additional chemical called trifloxystrobin and a different mode of action in group 11. So this would be what we consider a premix. Now, before moving on, an important note on premixes is that using a premix fungicide does not guarantee efficacy. Now, pulling the Fungicide Efficacy Guide for Control of Soybean Foliar Diseases off the Crop Protection Network, we can see here I've isolated the Group 11 fungicides, and if we look closer at their ratings for control of frog eye leaf spot, we can see that they're all listed as P that are on this screen for poor control. What this means is if you were to select a premix fungicide with a Group 11 QOI, that QOI may provide little to no efficacy for frog eye leaf spot control in soybeans. So it's important to consult efficacy guides and include two products that have efficacy towards what you're trying to control or manage within your fields. So if we can take these concepts and move them into real-world examples, first we can look at leaf spot disease in peanuts. Now, there's several pathogens that can cause leaf spot diseases, but leaf spot diseases in peanuts in general. Research has shown that increased efficacy for control of leaf spot diseases has been managed or achieved by utilizing combined mode of action fungicides. Now, in these cases, the sole or single ingredient product still maintains some level of efficacy when we compare it to non-treated controls. However, that disease control significantly increased by utilizing premixes or utilizing multiple modes of action within rotations, oftentimes including two or more modes of action. Not only does this result in disease suppression, but in many cases, this also results in yield increases. This has been seen in several states throughout the U.S., including Georgia, Texas, and South Carolina. There's another real-world example, kind of give a timeline on fungicide introduction and resistance introduction. We look towards early blight control in potatoes. Now, potatoes, a production system, especially for early blight control, which is caused by Alternaria solani, that warrants multiple applications, oftentimes throughout the entire growing season. So if we go back in time to the early 1960s, we had introduction of a fungicide active ingredient called mancozeb. Since then, the Fungicide Resistance Action Committee has classified it as a Group M3, as it is a multi-site inhibitor. And this fungicide is still used today all across the world to control several fungal pathogens. But as we saw continued use, we started to see reduced efficacy for control of early blight. And then in the 90s, we started seeing these introduction of single site or site specific inhibitor fungicides. And 1998, to be specific, azoxystrobin, which is a group 11 fungicide, was given an emergency label, section 18, for use for control of early blight in potatoes. Due to high efficacy that was seen, we saw rapid adoption and repeated applications of this fungicide used over and over again. Similar is the case, we fast forward a few more years. We see the first introduction of an SDHI or Group 7 fungicide, in this case, boscalid. And again, high adoption rates, high usage due to how effective it was at controlling early blight in potato. However, as we've now seen with published manuscripts and published research, that this did not last long, as first published documentation of reduced sensitivity to azoxystrobin and other QOIs was in 2004, just several years after the introduction or labeling of the products for use in potatoes. Similar for boscalid, we see a first published documentation of reduced fungicide sensitivity several years after the introduction or the labeling of that product. So if we look at this timeline, we can see that from the first labeling or ability to use these products for control of specific diseases to the first sightings or published record of reduced sensitivity or resistance is just a few short years. And if we fast forward from this older timeline to today, what we see in the literature and research and reports is that integrated fungicide programs are now the way to go for utilizing different modes of action for control of early blight in potatoes. Oftentimes, these programs contain up to 5, if not more, modes of action, and they've all shown to increase effectiveness in controlling early blight over single mode of action programs and even dual mode of action programs. So this highlights the effectiveness of rotating fungicides and also using premixes as part of a rotational program. So in summary, rotate mode of action, particularly in systems that warrant repeated applications of fungicides. And this is to help preserve our long-term efficacy of our fungicides by preventing or delaying a reduction in sensitivity or resistance development within our fungal populations. Like I did just mention, we can see these resistant populations can develop rather quickly. And lastly, premix fungicides can be used to aid in disease control and even work better than single mode of actions at times, but that is provided that both active ingredients or multiple active ingredients within that premix are both effective at control of specific disease you're trying to manage.